Well, first of all, I'll just thank Amy for inviting me to be here with you this evening. And I have to say, what an amazingly lovely parish you have. And this event center is awesome. I would love to have something like this in my parish. It's beautiful. And this event is also just really nice. I mean, how often do you get the opportunity to come together with other women of faith
Michele.
and just enjoy yourself, have fun together, and be together? So thank you for letting me be here tonight with you. And I will also have to just preface this by saying, I'm not a speaker. So just, keep that in mind. So, when Amy called, I was a little surprised. I was thinking, who would want, are there people that are actually interested in my story? Would somebody want to hear that? And then I got to thinking about what she told me the topic was, Emmanuel, God with us. And I was kind of reflecting and thinking about that. And what does that mean? So if God is with us, it means we have a relationship with him. So if you have a relationship with someone, you spend time with them. You get to know them. And so I was thinking about all the people and the events in my life that have allowed me to come to know God and how that has taken place over time. And that the fact that all of us have a different path. You know, I'm going to share my story with you a little bit tonight, but each of your stories is going to be different. We all have a different way to come to know God in our lives. As Amy mentioned, I've had a few different things happen in my life, and I've really come to, over time, I feel like I've come to have such a better relationship with God. I've come to know him. I've come to trust him. And then most recently, in the last year and a half, I have come to surrender to him. I did. I had a really big challenge in the last 2.5 years, and we'll get to that later. But in preparing for this talk, it allowed me the opportunity to really reflect, to think about all of these things. And it's funny, you know, when things happen in the moment, you don't think, oh, that was God right there. I mean, sometimes maybe you do, but most often, if you look back and you say, you know what, thank goodness God was with me at that point because he led me to this point. So it's been really a wonderful experience for me just to have this opportunity to think about these things. So first, just some of the people that have influenced my faith life. I have to start, of course, first with my mom and dad. I was very fortunate to grow up in a Catholic family. I have 3 sisters, but we were the, you know, go to church on Sunday kind of family, even on vacation. How many of you are we go to church on vacation and you're that mom, right? So I'm still that mom. And we said grace before meals, you know, did the things. But it's not until you get older that you really start making those things your own. You know, when you're young, it's because your mom and dad say you have to, right? Or it's just expected and that's what you do. And then as you journey through time, you start to think about, well, why am I doing these things? And what does this really mean? And so you start to make it more your own. But so starting out, my parents had that, you know, base of faith for us. And then in particular, my mom, she was always such a caregiver. She was a nurse by profession, and then when she started having children, she stayed home with us. So she was always caring for someone. And whether it was us or extended family or friends in many of her groups, she was taking meals to and writing cards. And, you know, who writes cards anymore, right? Like, it's a good thing to write cards, but she was that person. She was a caregiver, and I saw that. She was such a model for me. And to watch her, it's helped me in my life to think about others and to try to model that and become a caregiver. So one of the things that she did, she participated in a program in our diocese. We were in the Springfield Diocese. And she would travel from Decatur once a month and go to Springfield. And it was a lay pastoral program. In fact, I think Donna did that too, right? Yeah. And it was a great program, but I would watch her go off, you know, once a month and just disappear. And she was taking these classes and then come back. And she was learning all sorts of things. I think it really helped her grow in her faith. She was learning about the saints. She was learning more about Catholic history. She was learning more about the traditions of the faith. And then she was coming back and sharing some of that with us. And by the time she was doing this, I believe I was in college at this point. And as Amy mentioned, I went to Xavier University in Cincinnati. And as part of our program of study, we were required to take 4 philosophy and 4 theology classes. So when I would come home, we actually had decent conversations about some of this stuff, you know, some things that I was learning at school and she was learning. And so we were both kind of supporting each other and growing in our faith. My dad was also always a very faithful man. He had grown up in the church. He had been in choir since he was high school, all the way till a couple months before he passed away. I mean, that was his thing. And, you know, Sunday church goer, all that kind of stuff. But he was very much kind of the rules guy. You know, we're going to follow it. What they told us to do, that's what we're going to do. And I think when my mom started learning more about the faith, and also when my dad retired and had more time, he was a doctor, so he was really busy until he retired. But then he had this time, and he was an avid learner. He always liked to read. He always liked to learn about things. And so he started learning more about our faith. And he would do those, you know, those great courses, and so he did some of those, well, St. Thomas Aquinas, or, you know, all those different things. But he was learning more about the faith, and he was making it his own. And he was really starting to have these mental conversations with himself, like, why did Jesus have to die on the cross? And all these different things. And so we would have these conversations when I would come home. And so my parents definitely influenced the fact that, you know, faith was certainly a part of our lives, but it was also something that you continued to learn. You continued to grow over time. And I think that's very true. I'm still learning, and I have a lot left to learn, but I'm enjoying it. And they certainly encouraged that for me. So I did go to university. I did learn some things there, and then I would say there was a kind of a big break in the formation process anyway, until I became a young mother. And at the parish that I was at, we had a program called Familia, and it was a 4-year program for young mothers. And I did that, and it was awesome. So my husband and I had moved to northern Kentucky, and neither of our families are from that area, and so I didn't know anyone. And it's really a tight-knit community. I mean, there are families there. And so meeting people was a little tricky, and not because they weren't interested, it's just because they already knew everybody. And so this program was great for me. I got to meet a lot of young mothers. And the whole program was based on St. John Paul II's theology of the body, and also on the dignity of women. And I learned so much. I learned that God loved me. I mean, not that I didn't already know that, but it's like, you know, as women in society, sometimes we're like, am I supposed to work? Am I supposed to stay home? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? And it really lifted everyone up. It said, you are a woman of God, and you are perfectly and wonderfully made, and He loves you. And He has a plan for you. And it was so wonderful for me to hear that. I needed to hear that. It was a really good thing. So I met so many women during that time, and they became my faith partners. You know, somebody's sick, we prayed for them. Somebody needed meals, we brought meals to them. All those types of things. We really supported each other. I also liked it because it was consistent. We met twice a month. I had accountability. I needed accountability. You know, left to my own devices, I'm not gonna go and read the Bible on my own. I don't have that. I need that accountability. I needed people to be there with me on the journey and help me stay on the path. So that was really good. I liked it so much that when my 4 years were up, I did it again. And this time I was a group leader. And the added bonus of being a group leader is that the leaders got formation. So we had our own separate meeting, and we got to learn more about God and the program that we were presenting to these other women. So it's just a beautiful, wonderful program, and it really, really helped me. So now my second 4 years is up, and I'm like, okay, now what am I gonna do? Because I really did need those meetings. I needed to have a program that I could follow, kind of like a diet. You know, if I didn't have a buddy with me going on the path, it wasn't gonna happen. So luckily I had a friend who invited me to this thing called Encounter with Christ. And it turned out that a lot of the people who were the leaders, so to speak, of that familiar program that I was in, were in this Encounter with Christ. And come to find out, there was an umbrella group that was over the whole thing. It was called Regnum Christi. And it's actually a lay apostolate movement within the church. And I ended up joining that movement. But the thing for me that has helped me with this group that I have joined, we have weekly meetings. We have kind of a list of what we're working on, and it helps keep us accountable. It helps us to try to grow in our faith constantly. You know, you master that thing, move on to something else. You try something else, and so it's been really good. And then it has extended my faith family. I now know even more people that can pray for me when I need it, that I can pray for, that we take bills to each other. All those wonderful things. The other thing that I get from being in this Regnum Christi movement is that I have the opportunity to go on retreats. I have the opportunity for formation events. I have the opportunity to meet with a spiritual director if I want to. And boy, if you get that opportunity, take it, because it is really nice to have a spiritual director. But it's been a wonderful thing for me, and it's really put me on this path of learning. So I'm so grateful for all those things. The other thing that I would say that really influences your faith life is not just, specific formation that you do, but also certain events happen in your life. And sometimes these events, they're like aha moments, and you're like, okay, that was a God moment. So God was intervening at that time and helped me. And you can kind of feel it or see it. So I've had several of these in my life. And in fact, so much so that my sisters kind of tease me and they say, yeah, you're kind of like a cat with 9 lives. And you'll get that in a minute. So I'm going to share a few of these experiences with you. So when I was young, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10, something like that, I was walking downtown with my mom, and it was in the winter, and there was ice everywhere, and I just slipped and fell. And I got back up, but when I had slipped and fallen, my tongue had flipped back and lodged in my throat and blocked it. And so then I got up, I made it to the sidewalk, and then I fell back down again. And I passed out. And so my mom was actually trained as a nurse, so she kind of knew what was going on. She gets down, she's next to me, and she's got her fingers in my mouth, and she's trying to dislodge my tongue. So here I am, I wake up, and I'm lying on the ground, and my mom's got her fingers in my mouth. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And meanwhile, other people are passing by, and they're like, oh, I know CPR, I can help. And she's like, it's okay. But all of this to say, here, who doesn't think that your mom isn't like the best, right? Super mom. At least that's how I felt like my mom was. And so here I wake up and I'm looking at my mom. And she's caring for me. And she's saving me. But it was just one of those moments, she was there to help me. God made sure that she was there to help me. Okay, fast forward a couple years. I did swim team. In fact, I was telling somebody earlier, one of my only experiences in Peoria was summer swim when I would come swim at the country club here. But anyway, it was winter swim time, and we were practicing, and some brilliant coach had this great idea to have us dive over a pole. We were practicing starts, and he wanted us to dive out far. So he thought if we dove over this pole, we had to reach out far to dive over this pole. Well, not only did we have to do that, we had to do it with our eyes shut. And I was scared. I really didn't want to do it. And so so I overcompensated. I went up, and then I went down. And I hit my head on the bottom of the pool. And so I came up, and I made some weird noise, and then I sunk back down in the pool. And my coach thought I was just goofing around. He thought I was playing. But my mom, super mom, right? My mom was up in the stands watching, and she saw the whole thing, and she yelled, "Get that girl out of the pool!" And And she comes down, and I wake up again, and look up, and who do I see? My mom. There, caring for me, loving me. Once again, God had made sure that my mom was there for me. And my mom doesn't get all the glory. So move on a few more years. I'm now about to enter into my junior year in college. I'm at Xavier in Cincinnati. I had been working at home during the summer as a lifeguard, and I was having a lot of headaches. And we were trying to figure out, why am I having all these headaches? So went to a bunch of doctors, got my eyes checked, all the different things. And my dad, he was a pathologist. And so, he was like, I don't know, you guys are too young, you don't remember Quincy, but he was that doctor who was the investigative doctor, trying to figure things out. So he was trying to figure out, why did she have these headaches? And finally they figured it out, and turns out I had a prolactinoma, which is a fancy way of saying I had a little pituitary tumor, so a brain tumor. And your pituitary is really small, so when you have a tumor there, there's no place for it to grow, and it causes problems. And it was giving me these really bad headaches. They put me on some medication. The medication sometimes has the ability to make these tumors shrink. Unfortunately, I was having such a reaction to the medication, I couldn't get up to a high enough dose for it to be effective. And so the medication was making my headaches even worse and made me feel bad and just lethargic all the time. And if you're a college student studying science, that does not work. You gotta go to class, you gotta study, you gotta take tests. And so this was a real problem. So by the spring, they decided, yeah, this medication isn't working for you, we're gonna have to try something else. So guess what I got to do for spring break my junior year in college? I got to have brain surgery. Woo! So it actually was a really good thing. It turned out to be a really good surgery, and prior to the surgery, one of the blessings, so I went to Xavier, it is a Catholic university. I had a really great group of friends there, and prior to my surgery, we all got together. We had a priest that we really liked there, and he did a healing mass for me. And all my friends were laying their hands on me and praying for me before me going into surgery. What a blessing. I could have gone to college anywhere in the United States, and I end up at a place where I meet priests that I like, that I have friends who will actually go to Mass with me, and they pray for me. What a great God we have. And I had a father who had connections and figured out who the best doctor was to do this surgery in Cincinnati, Ohio. What a great God we have. He was watching over me. So I made it through the surgery, and it was better. But unfortunately, they were not able to get everything out. So several years, fast forward several years now, I'm a teacher at an all-girls high school in Cincinnati. And the brain tumor's growing back. And I had to take the nasty medicine again. And so once again, I'm having more headaches, I'm lethargic. Once again, this is not good when you're a teacher. You need energy, you gotta be able to grade papers and do planning and all this stuff. And I was having a hard time. And so finally during this time too, I wanna say, I started to get depressed. At this stage, now I'm several years out of college, I'm single, I'm working at a Catholic school, I have a serious medical problem, and I'm thinking, how am I gonna pay for this? How am I gonna pay for all this stuff I'm gonna need? How am I gonna have a retirement? Who's gonna look after me? All this stuff. So I got all that going through my head. And then the other thing was, I really wanted to meet a guy. I've been dating, I had dated a lot of guys. In fact, I probably dated too many guys. But I was looking for that right guy, the right one. And I was really struggling, not finding him. So also at this time, I still lived in Greater Cincinnati. Instead of choosing my local parish, I continued to go to the parish on Xavier University's campus. And one of the nice things about that is you see a lot of former students show up there, and you see people you know, so that was kind of nice. And I kept running into this same guy who was a friend of a friend. And I think God was just sitting back and laughing at me at this point. He's like, when is she gonna trust me? Have I not shown that I take care of her? Because I ended up going out with this guy, and he's now my husband, John. But he was the guy. I met him, he loved me. He didn't care about all the stuff that was going on with me. We liked a lot of the same stuff. It was amazing. And again, God was taking care of me. He was right there with me. So right around this, I do have to mention this too. So you meet a guy and you do have these issues, and you gotta have some serious conversations. So honey, by the way, I have a brain tumor, and one of the side effects of having this brain tumor is I haven't had a cycle in about 10 years, and so I'm probably not gonna be able to have kids. Didn't faze him. Didn't faze him a bit. Okay, we'll adopt. All right, yes we will. Again, how does this happen? This doesn't just happen. This happens because God is with us. He was with me. So the medicine's not working again, so we gotta try something else. They don't wanna do surgery again, so now it's radiation. And I was lucky, I had a sister that followed me to school, not this sister Catherine, but a different sister Sarah, and she had been with me there at school during my surgery, which was such a blessing, and now she was still in Cincinnati when I was having this radiation. Again, such a blessing. So she was there helping me, and John was helping me, and then we ended up getting married, and then, I didn't really understand this radiation thing really well. But apparently it takes a few years for it to actually have its full effect. And so, surprise, surprise, about a year into our marriage, guess who had a cycle? And yeah, that was pretty awesome. And then, I don't know if you have these crazy families, but it went out on the family email chain. We've been praying for this girl for years. And she got a cycle. So, it was a big family news. So about a year later, now we were all ready. We were going for it right from the beginning, and nothing was happening. So I went and saw my reproductive endocrinologist, because who doesn't have a reproductive endocrinologist, right? I had so many doctors, it was kind of crazy. But anyway, so I go see him, and I'm just checking in with him, and I was a little concerned. I hadn't had a cycle in so long. I'm like, did it wither away? My heart, do things work? What's going on? So he does an exam, and at one point he just looks at me and goes, Michele! And I thought, I knew it. Something's terribly wrong. It's missing. I don't know. And he looked at me and he said, you're pregnant. Oh. I was 8 weeks pregnant, and I had no idea. No. I had never had a regular cycle, so I didn't know, What a surprise. Is God not so amazing? So good, so good. And so 9 months later, here comes little Miss Caroline Marie. Such a blessing. On the kitchen floor. That's another whole story. We'll go there someplace else, another time. But she was a blessing. We were so thrilled. And then, fast forward 5 years, we've now got 3 children, ages 5, 3, and 1. And my husband is heading out. He is going on his annual trip. He helps out with this thing called the Buckeye Boys State. It's an American Legion program. He loves it. The guys there are like his fraternity brothers, and it's really good kind of for both of us. For him, it's like the energizer thing that he needs, so that he comes back refreshed. So it's a good thing. But I will tell you, I was a little nervous about him leaving me with these 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1, for myself for about 8 to 10 days. I'm like, okay, because we didn't have any family in the area. We were the only ones there. Anyway, so he goes off, and unfortunately that that morning, I started feeling bad. And throughout the day, it just kind of was getting worse and worse, and I thought, I've got a stomach virus. My stomach was really upset, I had a headache, I was getting fever and chills. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I can't manage changing diapers when I can't even get up off the couch. So I didn't know what to do. I called the doctor's office, and they're like, yeah, we can't really get you in, and if you really need something, just go to the ER. I'm like, okay, how would I go to the ER with 3 children? So then I called on my sweet little precious Caroline. Now Caroline, she is sweet and precious, but she's also very timid and shy. She's grown out of it a lot now. She's 21 now, so she's much better. But 5-year-old Caroline was very timid and shy. And so I said, honey, I need you to go up to the neighbor, Miss Phyllis, who happened to be a nurse, and bring her down here. Okay, Mom. So here goes Caroline. We have a really long, steep driveway. And here she goes up the driveway, goes to the neighbor, and sure enough, she brings back Miss Phyllis. Phyllis comes in and she looks at me, and we talk for a moment, and she's like, I'm taking you to the ER. So she goes up and she gets her car, gets her husband. Husband comes down, takes my 3 kids, and then we go to the ER. So I'm at the ER. And by the time I get back into, to have somebody actually look at me, I'm in pretty bad shape at this point. And I threw up, and then that's the last thing I remember. And then I woke up, and here's my husband, and here's my mom, my dad, and my 3 sisters, who all live 5 hours away. I was like, what? It took a while. I didn't know what was going on. So it turns out, after I passed out, they did some testing, and they talked to the infectious disease doctor, who was racing over to that hospital because he was at another hospital. I had pneumococcal meningitis, and luckily the doctor ordered antibiotics for me from his car because it wasn't good. And when John got there, the doctor said, you need to call the family because we don't know. So when I wake up 3 days later, I was confused. I'm like, why are all these people here? But can you not look at it through the lens of God and just see all the God things that happen there? My little 5-year-old who doesn't like to talk to adults went and got one. My neighbor just happens to be a nurse, and they happened to be home and happened to have her husband watch my kids. I happened to get to the hospital at the right time and happened to have a doctor order medicine at the right time. Is God not amazing? I woke up and I had family in front of me. And at that point in my life, that's when I was going through that Familia program. So I not only had family in front of me, I had friends praying for me. I had meals being delivered to my house. God was taking care of me and my family. What an amazing gift. What an amazing gift. So I did recover. I'm doing good. Oh, and I should mention, part of the family gift, I had an aunt who was a kindergarten teacher, and since it was summer, she came and spent the whole summer with me and helped take care of my kids. And she doesn't have kids. That was quite a sacrifice on her part. She was amazing. So it turns out, I ended up having meningitis 2 more times. And that is not normal. So what had happened was, that brain surgeon that I had? So there were tiny holes, and bacteria was getting in. And that was, so they patched that up, and no more meningitis. Yeah, we're good. But again, just the blessings everywhere. All right, so all of these events have allowed me to grow in my faith, have allowed me to grow in my network of supporters, to grow in my faith family, to grow in my love and trust for God, and led me to my most recent event. So at the beginning of 2020, I started having intestinal issues. And I don't know, I would have an episode, so to speak, and then, 24 hours I was better. So I was like, I know it's not that bad. But I had a few of them, and I'm like, okay, this isn't right. So eventually I went to the doctor, and he's like, well, let's do a colonoscopy. Okay. So we do the colonoscopy, and it was pretty clear. They didn't really find anything. There was just one little area that was kind of fuzzy, he said. So he biopsied that area. But it takes a little while for biopsies to come back, or at least that kind. And so a few days later, I had another one of these episodes. And he's like, all right, we're just not gonna mess around anymore. So he ordered a CT. So I go and have a CT. And they see basically like a large grapefruit, small melon size tumor in my uterus. And so now they're really confused, like, colon, uterus. So it took them a little while to figure out what was going on, but eventually they decided I had colon cancer. And the program was going to be, okay, if everything goes the way we want it to go, we're going to do chemotherapy. If that's good and we shrink the tumor, we're going to have surgery. If that's good, we're going to have more chemotherapy to make sure we got everything, and then hopefully that does it. But you get that word cancer, and everything stops for a minute, right? It's a little surreal. I'm like, wait a minute, that happens to somebody else. That doesn't happen to me. But my husband and I are kind of like, okay, what's next? And the doctors told us the plan, but what's next? God had already figured that out. He already had a plan. So we had become really good friends with a priest nearby, and before my treatment started, he wanted to come and give me a blessing. So he comes on over to our house, and he's giving me a blessing, and then we're just talking. And he's telling us about this radio interview that he had just heard, and it was some priest who his mission was to try to get families to pray the rosary, and he said, we've got to give it all up to Mary. And our priest friend looked at us and he said, I think that's what you need to do. You need to give it all up to Mary. I'm like, okay, Father, but what does that mean? Give it up to Mary, okay. Well, the very next day, some friends had invited us to go to a movie, and they were friends that we didn't really interact with a whole lot, but we're like, you know what, we're going to a movie, because who knows when we're going to get to go to a movie again, so we went. And so we go to this movie, and it's in a real small theater, and turns out this movie is about the priest that our priest friend had heard the interview about. It was all about Father Patrick Peyton, and I don't know if you've heard of him, he is now deceased, but his mission in life was to get families to pray the rosary together, and he is the one who popularized the phrase, families that pray together, stay together. And if you watch the movie, the whole thing is he wants you to pray a rosary every day. All right, well, I'd prayed the rosary before. I was okay with that. I knew how it worked. But every day? Really? Every day? But we had to give it all up to Mary, didn't we? All right, we're going to give it a try. So John and I, we're going to do this. We were in. We were going to pray the rosary every day. But God, just to make sure we really got the message, a few days later, I get this really beautiful floral arrangement delivered, and it's got tissue paper all over it, so we get it up to my room, and I'm unpacking it. And beautiful flowers, but right in the middle is this 10 to 12 inch statue of Mary, Queen of the Universe, with her beautiful crown, and she's holding Jesus, and he has a little crown. And I don't know, when I got that, I was stunned. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I stopped in my tracks and I got down on my knees and I just said, Mary, you've got to help me with this. I want you to take me by your hand and lead me to your son. And I left that statue in my room on my dresser, and it faces my bed, so because I spend a lot of time in my bed, and I could see her every day and we would pray together. And she was there with me. My mother. Isn't that interesting how I had a mother who was looking at me? So, I also want to share with you one other prayer that became really important to me during this time. A friend, I was in a few different prayer groups, and a friend in one of my prayer groups had shared this prayer with me. It's called the Surrender Novena. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but if you're not, look it up. It's a good one. It's not easy. It's not an easy prayer to say, because when you say this prayer, what you're basically saying that you're going to do is turn over everything to God and let Him take care of it. And that, the words might be easy to say, but when you say it and really try to mean it, dear Lord, I'm going to hand you my child, and I want you to take care of him because I can't do it anymore. Dear Lord, I am handing you this sickness because I have no control over it, and I need you to take care of it for me. Lord, I want you to watch over my family during this time because I'm in this bed and I can't make meals, I can't go to practices, I can't do that stuff. And I need you to take care of them for me. So there's a different prayer that you say every day of the week with this novena, but every day it ends with the same line and you say it 10 times. And the last line is, "Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything." And you're supposed to say that 10 times. And by the time you get to that 10th time, if you're not just saying it just to say the words and you're thinking about what you're saying, it is hard. But it's also amazingly powerful. So how blessed was I? I had this thing, this cancer thing. But God was caring for me through Mary, through my family, through my doctors, through all those people I had met in my different prayer groups. I had a meal train from here to, it was going. And then I had a really great blessing in my sisters. I have 3 sisters, and my chemo treatments were every 2 weeks, and they lasted about 3 days. But it basically took me a week to kind of get the treatment and then kind of get through the part of it, till I could start kind of being okay a little bit again. And so my sisters rotated and coming and staying with me every time I had a treatment. And they all live over here in Illinois, and I live over there in Kentucky. How blessed am I? So one other grace that I want to share with you that I feel like I received through this is the grace of peace. I asked each of my children in kind of preparation for this talk, I asked them what they felt like they had seen God doing throughout this whole experience. And they all had very similar answers, but the youngest one said something like this. He said, okay, sorry, gotta get my words. He said, you're pretty much the same. Nothing really changed. I know there was stuff going on, but you weren't really any different. And that's like the biggest compliment I think a kid could give to you during something like that, right? That he could see that everything was okay. That even though that there was stuff going on, it was still going to be okay. What a gift, again, this grace of peace. And I have to say that, I know a lot of people have different reactions when they hear that word cancer, and they are all valid. Screaming, yelling, crying, melting into a heap, not talking to people, trying to do everything because you think, okay, I gotta get it all done. All those things are totally valid. But for whatever reason, God gave me, and this is not me, because I don't think I would have acted this way on my own. He gave me a grace of being very even-keeled throughout this whole process. I didn't really have the meltdown moment. I didn't really get mad. I just kind of kept going and asked Mary and our Lord to be there with me and help take care of me. I think the biggest thing I had to do in order to allow that to happen was what that novena was telling me about: surrender. If I had tried to take care of it myself, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have happened. I had to surrender. So all these people throughout my life, all these 9 lives experiences that I've had all led me to this point where I did have faith in God. I did have a relationship with Him. I did feel like I know Him. I did feel like He cared for me, and I could surrender. And I'm standing here today to tell you that I am in complete remission of my cancer.
Woo!
This talk has actually been a huge gift to me because it allowed me the opportunity to reflect. I mean, so many times we just don't do that. We don't take time to think back over the events of our lives. And I think, as you can see, as I'm sharing some of the events with you, you can see God's hand in the things that have happened. And the same is true for each and every one of you. I encourage you during this Advent time of calm and reflection and preparation for the Lord coming, take some time for yourself. Think back over the events and people in your lives and how they've influenced your faith journey. And then think too, I think most of us probably are moms or grandmas in here or aunts or something. How are we influencing others in their faith journey? My hope for you is a peaceful Advent. I hope you have time to prepare your hearts and minds. I hope that you can trust in God's love for you. And ask yourself those questions. Who in your life? What are the experiences? How do you know that God is with you? And what are you doing to help grow that relationship with God? Because I'm here to tell you, God is with us. Emmanuel, God is with us. Thank you.